Hello, I'm Dr. David Pendergrass. I recently saw most of a video by a guy named Justin Brierley, and he interviewed Alex O'Connor, who's a very popular level atheist, been out for a good while now. And Alex talked about something called emotivism, and I thought I would explain to you why emotivism as a moral system is, well, what it is and why it's completely unpersuasive. But I thought it'd be a little time to talk about, a little education about how moral philosophy works. And metaethics is how we talk about what is right, what is wrong, what those words mean, how we determine what is right, what is wrong. And when it comes to ethics itself, there's one particular, you can bifurcate everything, this versus this versus this. And one of the categories in moral philosophy we talk about is realism. Sometimes it's called objectivism versus subjectivism. So realism versus subjectivism, or objectivism versus subjectivism. And under subjectivism, there's multiple subcategories like relativism, and emotivism is one of them. So basically this issue of realism versus subjectivism comes down to this question: to what do moral values refer? To what do moral values refer? So in a nutshell, realism or objectivism, also called cognitivism, they believe that truth itself, that there are objective truths that exist independently of human beliefs, perceptions, or feelings. These truths are out there in the world, and our beliefs correspond to or fail to correspond to them because they're outside of my personal preferences or beliefs. So therefore, not only about truth, but moral realists, moral objectivists would say that moral values are abstract properties that are objective in the same sense that geometrical or mathematical properties might be thought of as objective. So they're objective because they're out there independent of me and you, because they're either come from the ground, it's called grounding. They're either grounded to an absolute standard, and for theists, the absolute standard is God, or they're grounded in some kind of floating reality out there that's usually falls in the category broadly called Platonism. But Platonist and theist both agree that they are moral realists, or moral objectivists. So this is very important to understand. For a moral realist says torturing innocent beings is wrong. So let's say torturing a baby. Torturing a baby is wrong. They're claiming that the statement reflects an objective moral fact, independent of human opinion. So let's think this way. Moral values are properties of a behavior. Like hardness is a property of wood, or this chair upon which I sit. So hardness is a property of this chair. Now, how do I know that? Because I can sense it. I sense it for my senses. So I have physical senses, of course, that are physical electric signals. They go to my mind, and then my mind says, after all, enough of discovering things like this in my past, from childhood, and other people who say the same thing, yeah, I would call that hard or hardwood. And that's where we get the concept of hardness from. So it's a property of this chair, and it implies, the word hardness implies sturdy, not fluid, not vacuous. I can sit on it and ideally it'll hold my weight. So it's a property of this chair. Moral realists say that's what moral values are to behaviors. They are properties of the behavior. So we say raping someone is bad, raping is wrong. We're not saying I feel it's wrong. We're saying it is wrong. It's a property of the behavior. That is to say, it is immoral. It is immoral. It is broken and moral law. You should not have done that. It's very important to understand. It's not a parasite per se, but it's an accompanying feature of the behavior. So moral realists say. Now, virtually all thinkers forever have been moral realists around the globe for recorded history. And I'll come back to that more in a second. It's something I developed not that long ago, frankly, is a different way of thinking about it. So that's a realist. The opposite is subjectivist, or relativism, or non-cognitivism, or emotivism. Now, those all have different nuances, but I'm going to get these real short and sweet. In this view, subjectivists hold something about truth. The truth is, where more realists think that truth can be objective, like mathematical truths, subjectivist thinks that truth is contingent purely upon the individual, or individual's beliefs or perception of their feelings, or the culture itself. So truth is true if it coheres with a person's beliefs and feelings. Say that one more time. A statement is true if it coheres with a person's or group's beliefs or feelings. There's no external objective reality to which beliefs must correspond, as subjectivists would say that. Therefore, moral subjectivism in the realm of ethics says that moral judgments are based on individual or collective preferences, feelings, or beliefs. So when a subjectivist says raping is wrong, they mean something like, I disapprove of raping. They might say, if they're a relativist, they'd say, my culture disapproves of raping. And that's subjectivism. Emotivism, which Alex Connor mentions in this video and other places many times I've heard him say, that was developed in the 20th century. So it's a brand new phenomenon. Emotivism was developed in the 20th century by philosophers, atheists like A.J. Ayer, Charles Stevenson. And that was influenced by something called the logical positivist movement. The logical positivism, particularly popular in the 1920s, was a belief that all real truth is scientifically proven. If it can't be demonstrated scientifically, it's not true, which means it's not real, which means issues about God and ethics are nonsense statements. They don't exist because you can't prove that it's wrong to rape. You can't prove that in a scientific laboratory, therefore that statement means nothing. All it means is you have a feeling. You just said a feeling about it. So that's all that means. Subjectivists might say this. We'll use raping again. A pure subjectivist would say, raping is wrong. What that really means is your subjectivist is, I believe that raping is wrong. I disapprove of raping. So they're just about my personal beliefs, just I believe that. Now if you ask the follow-up question of subjectivists, why do you believe that? They might say, I just choose to believe that. They might say, that's what my daddy taught me. They might say, I have indigestion. The point is, there's nothing about there. It's just, I believe it. I believe it. I feel it. I believe it. It's like modern atheists saying that atheist means I don't believe it. So over 300 to 400 years of history, the term atheist meant a person who holds to the proposition God doesn't exist. And ever since really Antony Flew in the essay 1972 and then Richard Dawkins, no, it just means I don't believe it, I don't believe it. That's a kind of theological subjectivism. I don't believe it. So it's just about my personal beliefs and preferences. So that's subjectivism. Relativism is another subcategory. They would say raping is wrong. That means our culture disapproves of raping. That's relativism, is cultures or societal norms decide that. An emotivist would say rape is wrong. What they mean is, I feel gross when I think about rape. It's an emotional claim. That's just emotional claim. That's all it is. Now, I won't spend too much longer on this, but there are major critiques to all of the non-realist approaches.
The whole point is that we've come up with an ethical theory to tell us what's right and wrong. And the only way, not just one of the most popular ways, the only way that people debate and discuss ethical theories and test them is they test them against what? Our intuitions, which is just the way we feel. So what we do is we say we've got this ethical theory and we're trying to rationalize, we're trying to construct essentially like a sort of calculator. But when the calculator, gives us an answer that we feel is wrong, that we don't like, we don't accept the answer, we change the calculator. And so feelings are so dominant here. I mean, and you notice it all the time.
So let me say something quick about this from the video clip that we saw when it talks about intuition. And when I first watched the video and someone said, what do you mean by feelings? Really intuition? They mean the same thing. Like, oh, no, they don't. Not in moral philosophy. No, they do not at all. This is really important because this is the whole game. Intuition is the immediate understanding or realization without the conscious use of reasoning. It's another reason why people like Michael Shermer and many others talk about if we just be reasonable, rational. Morality is not using our reason. It's a fundamental misunderstanding in moral philosophy. Ethics are not decided by rational processes. It's from moral intuition. Moral intuition itself is a way of knowing something without the use of explicit analytical processes. For example, you can have sensory intuition of a table. I just know it exists. I just know it. I didn't think about it. I didn't do a laboratory experience. I can have a sense of it. I know it instantaneously. But the sad thing is true about intuition. I can have an intellectual intuition of a conceptual truth, like 2 + 2 = 4. I just know it. I don't need to reason my way there. When someone says 2ness plus 2ness = 4ness, I go, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I just know that it's right. I know the law of non-contradiction is true. It can't be A and non-A simultaneously. That violates the law. It's true. I just know it. That's intuition. I didn't reason my way there. I just know it. Intuitions are not infallible, but they're prima facie justified. That is, you could be mistaken, but you have every reason prima facie, it means at face value, to believe it up front. You have a warrant to believe it until proven otherwise. That is, one is justified to believing the viewpoint in the absence of overriding counter-arguments or defeaters. Moral intuition, so that's intuition. Moral intuition refers to the immediate and usually automatic, usually non-reflective judgments about the rightness or wrongness of an action, situation, or behavior. I'll just keep it simple and say behavior. The immediate knowledge of the rightness or wrongness of the behavior. These intuitions typically arise without conscious deliberation or explicit reasoning. They're often described as gut feelings in the vernacular. Something in my gut just told me that. But they're cognitive in nature. They involve an evaluative sense. They're best understood as perceptions, judgments, apprehensions, not emotions. So moral philosophers talk about moral values. They say, how do you know it? They say, I have a moral apprehension. My intuition told me. I know it's confusing in the vernacular because people in modern English, at least in English they do, maybe they do in other languages, they say, it just felt right. It felt right. Well, feelings can accompany moral intuition, no doubt about it, but feelings are not the same thing. It's a category error. When I just know that rape is wrong, it is immoral, it's because I know it's wrong. I didn't come to a scientific explanation. I didn't reason about it. I just instinctively know that rape is wrong. I simultaneously feel disgust toward rape. They're similar, but they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. That's the key here. In moral philosophy, no one thinks they're the same thing. Here are some key features of moral intuition. It's immediate and it's fast. It occurs quickly. If someone's being mistreated, you know instinctively that it's wrong. You don't have to reason it. You don't think about it. You don't have to do a math problem. You just know it. Secondly, it's not always consciously accessible. Sometimes the reasons behind our moral intuitions might not always be apparent to us. We might have a strong apprehension that something is right or wrong. We might struggle to articulate why we feel that way, or think that way, or apprehend that way. If I go, I'm just so disgusted. Why do you feel that strong emotion toward that? Because it's wrong. Why is it so wrong? Well, I got to think about that. I just know that it's wrong. Moral intuitions can be culture influenced. They can be, no doubt about it, just like things can be taught. We learn about moral inclination just like we learn about mathematics. My math teachers taught me math. It doesn't make math relative. 2 plus 2 equals 4 because I'm white or American or Southern. It just is 4. And I had people in reflection for centuries teach me the multiplication tables because they thought about it. I didn't start out thinking about it. They taught it to me. It's just a feature of reality that 2 times 2 equals 4. That's just the way it is. So it can be culturally taught. It can be influenced, yes, but it is instinctual. The teaching part doesn't make it relative. So the key here, though, of course, of moral intuition, one more time, is that it's not the same as a feeling. And so when a person says something is wrong, the behavior, I'm giving a quality to that behavior that it is. So there are multiple reasons why emotivism and subjectivism, whatever, fails. One, of course, is it fails to recognize how virtually all humans in recorded history have used moral discussions, moral conversations. When the average normal person says that is wrong, what the average normal person means is it's wrong. They don't mean I feel it's wrong. They don't mean you ought to feel what I feel. They don't mean I found this in a laboratory. What they mean is it's simply wrong to do it. And so the average normal human being apprehends that something is instinctively right or instinctively wrong. Even if we're mistaken, even if not all groups don't always agree, there's something inside of us that tells us that. 2, it also demonstrates that emotivism fails because emotivism, if you're pure emotivist, you're pure subjectivist, you cannot hold to the belief that some decisions or behaviors are better than others, because that doesn't make any sense on your view. You can't say what the Nazis did was worse than what Mother Teresa did in Calcutta. You can't say that at all. I mean, you can say it, but it doesn't make any sense. If you're being consistent, you have no grounds to say that whatsoever. Third, there are numerous moral quandaries, we call them. We have competing moral values that, again, every basic normal human being holds to, that you cannot explain unless moral realism is true. Again, I'm going for a long time. I just wanted to talk very quickly about the distinction between intuition and emotions, and why emotivism, at least some big reasons why emotivism fails. It fails on definitions, it fails on basic human experience, and it fails because it cannot hold up to the self-contradictions that emotivists and subjectivists make by claiming things as bad and wrong. So, for example, not to pick on him, but Alex O'Connor, he'll quote, as so does Michael Sherman and everybody else, basically, just like Abraham Lincoln said about the slaves, is that not wrong, then nothing is wrong. Canaanite slaughter, if that's not wrong, nothing is wrong. No, if you're a motivist, nothing's wrong. Nothing. Nothing's wrong. The Canaanite, that's nothing wrong. Nothing is wrong, and nothing is right. Those words, right and wrong, on your view, simply mean I have a particular feeling associated with that behavior. That's fine, but this means you've left the discussion of morality. Now we're talking about your psychological state, which might be intriguing, we've left the subject. And moral philosophy, if you actually go do your own research, whoever your video, you're watching this, go get a degree, go do classes, undergrad, master's, PhD, as a lot of people like us have, and you'll discover that moral philosophy is a very intriguing conversation, and it's worth having. But that's all for now. I just wanted to give some quick thoughts on this. It was fairly quick. If you made it this far, God bless you. You get extra crowns in heaven. If you have other videos like this to which you want me to respond, let me know, and I'll see you next time.